Let's talk about our food systems as a country. And we are joined by two guests in the studio. One is Dr. Edwin Mbugua, Maina. He's a health and nutrition coordinator at Concern Worldwide Kenya. And the other one is Schniepper. He is the Kenya country director at Welthungerhilfe. We had hosted somebody from Welthungerhilfe last time, so I can remember how we pronounce Welthungerhilfe. We are going to talk about the Kenya's Global Hunger Index Report 2023. It was released recently. We'll be discussing it. Gentlemen, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. How do you feel? Are you well?
Yes,
thank
you so much. Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
Very good. Karibuni sana.
Thank you.
CT will give you the day's proverb.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week are from the Republic of Seychelles, the island republic of the Seychelles. Opportunity does not wake up those who are asleep.
Opportunity does not wake up those who are asleep. I'll start with you, Dr. Maina. What is your interpretation of this proverb?
Thank you so much, Eric. I think this is a very apt proverb for the conversation that we are going to have today. Basically, it reminds me of what we used to be taught, that you don't wake up sleeping dogs, because if you are not prepared or you have not planned to see an opportunity and take advantage of it, then you're unlikely to let it pass. And, we can align it to what we're going to discuss today about food security. If we as Africa fail to wake up and see the opportunities we have to improve our food security, then we'll have missed the bus. Yeah.
That's a good one. Christian, what's your interpretation?
Yeah, thanks. That's an interesting one. From the Seychelles, you said, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, yeah, I would say when related to the topic of today, of course, the topic hunger and malnutrition might be overwhelming, and the challenges are very high, but also very relevant. And I think when we stay alert and when we are trying to work together, then we see those opportunities. So we shouldn't be asleep on the topic, but it's more relevant than ever. And we need to grab the opportunities that are out there to overcome this challenge and to see it.
Nice.
In my interpretation.
City? How have they performed?
Oh, they've done very well. You know, the beauty of asking someone to interpret, they can't possibly be wrong. Even if they try, because what they're telling you is how they understand and how they relate to the proverb. And so we are the richer for it, because we now get to hear perspectives that we hadn't considered. Yes.
Indeed. So earlier this week, the Standard Group as official media partner was there covering Concern Worldwide and Welthungerhilfe's release of a new report in conjunction with the government, of course, the Global Hunger Index 2023 Kenya report. Tell us about this report, Christian.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so it's the Global Hunger Index this year with the theme, The Power of Youth in Shaping the Food Systems. It has been published since 18 years. So in 2005, it was the first edition. And we are very proud as Welthungerhilfe and also concerned to publish such a report in partnership, because it informs the world about the current status of the global hunger situation all over the world. We have data of about 125 countries, and the Global Hunger Index is basically ranking those countries in different categories of hunger situation that is out there, from serious, alarming, and those stages that are a bit in a better situation. So it allows the public to talk and to discuss the results, and also, of course, get a better understanding where a nation like Kenya is faring.
How do you prepare the report? What are the ingredients?
The ingredients are basically data that is publicly available. So it's usually data from UN organizations, but also here in Kenya we refer to data from the Kenyan National Bureau of Statistics, and in particular the Kenyan Demographic Health Service, so a survey. So the data is always provided, and then it's a kind of meta study from all the different countries and bringing the different data together. And we come most likely to the specific score, but the data is coming basically from those sources.
The concept of hunger presupposes that it doesn't exist everywhere. Because if it existed everywhere, then the suggested difference wouldn't be there. Because if everybody was hungry, then that would be the status quo. So it means some people are less hungry, some absolutely full, some have more than what they know what to do with. So let me ask the question. Does the world produce more food than it can eat?
That for sure, yeah. So it's a matter of distribution, yeah. And
Okay.
it's a matter of not only distributing the food, but matter of resources that are available to have food systems that are able to produce that food that is needed in the particular locations.
So what we're saying is that we actually don't have a very complicated problem, is there? Because at least from the supply end, there's enough food in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, coming back to the proverb, right? It's about opportunities and grabbing them. Yeah, exactly.
So why then do we have hunger?
Perhaps I can come in and talk about, the report exactly demonstrate the distribution of hunger in the world. And we look at a number of key indicators. We look at the population that is not accessing enough food, undernourished. We look at the population of children who are wasted. Wasting means thin for age. We look at the population of children who are stunted. This means they're not getting adequate food over a longer period of time, and they are short for their age. And we also look at child mortality, because hunger and malnutrition predisposes one to diseases. A child who is severely wasted is 9 times likely to succumb from diseases like pneumonia than a normal child. And back to the question, the report actually just classifies various countries based on their hunger levels. And based on the report, we are projecting that about 58 countries will not reach the 2030 goal of low hunger in the world.
I think you still haven't answered the question, because it is asking, so if the world is producing more food than it can consume, why do we have hunger?
Maybe I can come in.
Yes.
So it's the system here in Kenya. There's a food system here in Kenya with various actors and various interlinkages between people that are working along the food system, the chain between production and folk. That's how we usually use the picture. And of course, that system is also exposed to circumstances like climate change, like the ecological zones that you have. Of course, it's much more difficult to produce agricultural products in the north compared to the central or the western regions. So there are various factors that are defining a food system, and that at the same time are the opportunities that we would like to find, but also the challenges that make food either being available or not. And of course, the actors include the government, the private sector, the civil society, and the households themselves. So it's a joint effort, a joint coordination mechanism, kind of, that needs to work well for food systems to produce locally enough food being available, and also not only available but affordable
To all.
for people to
food
access
security.
and to buy and to have. We call it to have a diverse diet at all times. Yeah.
Christian, what is a food system?
Yeah, a food system can be broadly described, as I tried to say already. The picture is usually a bit intuitive from the production side to the folk or the consumption side. So you have the producer, which is the farming household, or the smallholder farmer, but also the large-scale farmer. You have usually a processing part where food is collected, packaged, and then you have the distribution part where it's brought to the different locations where you can buy it from, to the supermarkets, to the small shops, and then it ends up on the plate. So in every household, people make decisions what to eat today. And there's also the component of food wastage and food losses along the value chain, which is also very important to consider. And all this is embedded, let's say, that's only part of the story, because all this is embedded into a broader system that has something to do with where are the agricultural inputs coming from? Yeah, where's the fertilizer coming from? The seeds? Where are the skills coming from? The farming skills, or the people that are doing agro processing? They're usually entrepreneurs. Where are the entrepreneurship skills coming from? Where are the financial sources coming from for all these businesses? What is the policies around it? And it goes up to the levels of gender questions and who makes decisions in the household, what to put on the plate and what to do also maybe with the income of the agricultural production. So you can see how easily and complex it gets within a few descriptions and a few sentences. So it is just a matter of, I would say, joint effort, because you see already this complexity requires all of us to bring in our capacities and expertise and a good analysis where to intervene and what to do.
So what is the situation of hunger, situation with hunger on a global scale, and then looking at Kenya as a specific country? What are we looking at today?
We've made significant progress since we started developing or producing the GHI report. We've made significant progress, but from 2015 to date we have stagnated. We are not seeing an improvement in the reduction of hunger levels, and as I mentioned, we are projecting that about 58 countries globally are not going to meet the 2030 goal of less hunger. And the highest proportion of countries that are, in serious hunger situation are in Africa, and specifically sub-Saharan Africa. For Kenya, we have progressed significantly from about 36.1 in when we started producing the report, and in 2015 we were at around 22.5 in terms of the global hunger index for Kenya, but that has stagnated, and we are currently at 22 points in terms of the hunger index. So we have stagnated, but we are doing slightly better than our neighbors. If you compare with the index across the region, we are doing significantly better.
Can you break it down a little bit? So when we say that Kenya was at 36 and is now at 22, did I invert those? Is that correct? Was
Yes.
at 36 now at 22? What are we saying exactly? That there are people around the country who eat nothing in a day? Or are we saying that there are people who are eating 3 meals, 2 meals, 1 meal? Or are we saying there's undernourishment, so you're not getting the full range of nourishment? When we say that people are hungry,
Yes.
or that there is hunger, what are we saying exactly?
So maybe I can refer back to how we calculate the hunger index. We look at issues to do with undernourishment, and currently 27.8% of individuals are undernourished. Means that they do not get adequate food in terms of quantity and quality. We talk about various food groups, so which define the quality of the food that they get. The next one we talk about is child wasting. We've made significant progress. We are currently at around 18%, meaning 1 in every 5 children in Kenya are wasted, and this is a significant 5% wasting in Kenya, meaning that of all the children who are under 5% are wasted, and that they are thin for their age. We've also seen a remarkable reduction in stunting, where we are talking about when children are not adequately receiving food in terms of quantity and quality over a long period of time, then they become stunted, they become short for their age. We've seen a significant reduction, but we are not there yet. And we've also seen a reduction in terms of child mortality, and those are the parameters that constitute what we call the global hunger index. So the short answer to your question is that our people, 27.8% of Kenyans, are not receiving adequate food in terms of quantity and quality. So it's not that they're not eating at all the whole day. It's just that they're not meeting the minimum parameters.
Okay.
Does that mean they are food insecure?
Absolutely. I think you've summarized that, and we are just coming off from what we call the short-range assessment, where we assess the number of individuals who do not have access to adequate food. We are currently at about 1.9 million individuals, despite the good rain and the seemingly improvement in terms of vegetation cover. We are still seeing very high numbers of individuals who are still very food insecure. And in terms of treatment for malnutrition, we are seeing about 850,000 children who still need treatment for malnutrition. So it is a very serious issue. And these are some of the indicators or data sources that inform the development of the Global Hunger Index.
Christian, does the report look at why this is the case? The reasons as to why people are undernourished, why there's food insecurity, the reasons behind that, and then if they do, what are some of those reasons why the situation is the way it is?
Yeah, thanks. I quickly want to add to one of the figures because I think it's also important. So you mentioned the children under 5 being on treatment. So 850,000, I think that's even slightly higher, close to 1 million. That means that children cannot digest food anymore. Right? They have reached a level where they need to go to the hospital and get treatment, and some of them will die there. Yeah. So it's a very terrible figure. Yeah, and for me it's the most devastating that we find usually among those figures out there. Other figures also to mention a bit the totals, also coming from those IPC reports and UNICEF reports, it's about 6 to 8 million people in the ASAL regions alone being considered food insecure. So at risk of having this kind of situation that you need to go to hospital for treatment. So it is a very serious situation, and as Edwin said, we are stagnating since a decade almost. Yeah, so we are since 2015. That's almost a decade of
Why
stagnation.
are we stagnating?
Exactly. So thanks for that. Yeah. So I'm linking to the reason. So of course there are let's say those factors that are very global, right? So I would call them the mega trends. So there's something like the climate change and the droughts that this country has experienced. And now recently the El Nino situation with the rains. We have also the COVID-19, of course, and the inflation, the high food prices, the fuel prices. You can say a whole total disruption of a global economy with all these crises. And then, of course, also the war in Ukraine plays a role here. We have this fact, as I said already, we have different ecological zones in the country. So in some areas it's easier to grow food than in others, and some are also more affected by those effects of the climate change, for example, than other regions. We have the population growth that is also there, that the demand onto the food system is just growing. So, and there's also a trend for more, let's say, rural people go to urban areas, which I think we also mentioned that figure in several occasions. The average age of the farmer is 60 years. So that's also one of the reasons why maybe production levels are not where they could be. Yeah, but those are the mega trends, and of course they are a bit frightening because you might wonder what can we do about them. And of course we address them on global scene. Nairobi has hosted the African Climate Summit, and those are all very important initiatives. But coming back to the food system that is here locally and all these stakeholders and actors that are part of this food system, there are also plenty of issues that we can address directly here within our reach. And they have something to do with, yeah, I mentioned already some of them, agricultural inputs, where are they coming from, are they affordable, do people know how to use them, where are the entrepreneurs, where are the youth, yeah, this is also the topic of today, where are they in the system, are we working with them enough, are we using the potential out there that comes with ICT and IT solutions. What about post-harvest handling? This country is losing a lot of production just simply because there are no storage. The producer organizations are maybe not organized enough to really participate in the market meaningfully. So again, the nutrition education. What is a diverse diet? How do I feed a child when it's between 0 and we call it the first 1,000 days that are so critical for your future as a child. Are children going to school? Is there enough school feeding? You know, everything is interconnected, and of course those global trends are very scary. But there's also a lot that we can still do within Kenya and within our means and within our setting priorities and trying to put the topic on the agenda. And that's basically also why we're here, right? Because sometimes, as much as we talk hunger, malnutrition, but for some strange reason, it always drops the priority list.
Right.
And, that's really terrible.
Our guests this morning are Dr. Edwin Mbugua Maina. He is the Health and Nutrition Coordinator at Concern Worldwide Kenya, and Christian Schniepper, who's a Kenya Country Director at Welthungerhilfe. We are discussing Kenya's Global Hunger Index Report 2023. Some snapshots of it, just that big figure. More than a quarter of Kenyans are food insecure. They don't have access to adequate food in adequate quantities and quality. This is some serious thing. I see you have well-binded report here.
Yeah,
Christian.
exactly. So I'm happy to distribute to all of you a bit. So, and I would like to encourage everyone who's listening and watching to go also to the website of either Concern or Welthungerhilfe, or there's also the website globalhungerindex.org, where you can find the report, but also
globalhungerindex.org.
globalhungerindex.org.
Okay.
And you can find this report, of course, and also the synopsis, which is a kind of summary and nice graphs that you can use, and also all the other reports from the previous years. And as much as the data might be a bit outdated, of course, but the themes are always also very interesting to look at. So we had themes about inequality, conflict, migration, and all this. And today's theme is more about the power of youth. So it's a very interesting document, a very interesting read, and please help us to use these graphs and to create this public attention that is needed to the topic to find joint action.
Just from the top of it, looking at some of these graphs, I'm looking at regional from 2000, 2008, 2015, and then 2023. And if we're looking at index scores, Africa south of the Sahara has the highest numbers. We're looking at alarming levels of hunger.
Sure.
South Asia comes in second, West Asia, and then North Africa.
Yeah.
Followed by Latin America and the Caribbean, and then South and Southeast Asia, and then rounding it out with Europe and Central Asia, right?
True. There's also a map.
So looking at those numbers, where does...
Kenya?
No.
I was betting on Kenya.
No, I'm just because and there's a reason why I'm asking this question. I'll ask the question, I won't wait for an answer, then I'll ask part B, then you'll understand.
Okay.
Where does North America, for example, come in here?
And Australia.
And Australia.
And
They are not.
Canada.
They are not here.
They're not part of it. Yeah.
And now this is part B.
Yeah.
We see the highest levels of food wastage
Yeah. Okay.
coming from North America in the world.
Yeah.
Can we relate the two here to say that here, well, they don't even have hunger problems? According to this, would we say that they don't have a hunger issue? But at the same time, we see that the numbers have told us that the kinds of food they throw away or that leave to waste can actually feed nations on a yearly. Is there a connection that we can make between the two?
You want to try?
Well, maybe just to come in on this, the reason why we haven't, ranked them is because we did not analyze the data from them. Actually, we've analyzed data from 125 countries, and out of 125 countries, Kenya is ranked 90th. And there are various reasons for that. Is that one, we see the issue of food hunger really affecting these particular countries that we have been able to analyze. But indeed, you make a very good point that, the food wastage we see in this country is quite significant. And going back to what Christian had talked about, it's an issue of distribution. And distribution is really influenced by ability, to buy the food from these countries. So while these countries are producing significant amounts of food, the countries that have the highest issues of food security also are affected with issues of poverty, purchasing power, economic power to be able to afford the food. But you raise a very important point, and I think this is something that, of course, we can definitely explore.
Yeah, maybe also to add on it after having a moment to reflect. So Of course, it's not as easy to say something like the food that is produced and wasted in America should come here and then we consume it here. I think that's, of course, not a very realistic.
Yeah, but if you play the numbers, you can say, well, look, if you imagine the kind of food that is wasted and imagine the numbers that you're looking at on this side of the pond.
I would say something like the food wasted and food losses is a waste of resources and massive resources because it takes a lot of effort to produce food. Yeah. I described again and again the food system, how complex it is. So it is just a massive waste of resources. And these resources can, of course, be spent and invested elsewhere and in a different way.
You know, we're discussing food as though it exists in isolation to everything else that happens, the geopolitics, the business interests, everything else that happens on the planet. Because all these things we're discussing arise from decisions that are made by people.
Exactly.
When countries decide to dump food or when they decide to pay farmers not to produce, there are reasons. And usually the politics that at that particular point in time in the country is dominating will determine some of these things. You see, like, if we move away from the global discussion and come back to Kenya and ask the question, does Kenya produce enough food to feed its people?
The answer is no. And I think Christian has mentioned that we do have serious issues that are affecting this. Climate change, for example, has really affected the ability of food production among communities living in the arid and semi-arid lands. And those are the actually the communities that are the most food insecure. So you find that if they are unable to produce their food, then we have the highest caseloads of malnutrition in those particular counties. We are talking about counties like Turkana, Marsabit, Mandera, and you'll be also surprised to know that Nairobi is in the top 10 counties with the highest caseloads of children in need of malnutrition. And the issue in Nairobi is not about production, but the issue of purchasing, purchasing power, the economic power of households to purchase. And I must remind you that we are coming from a very, very, very serious drought, the worst drought that we've had in 40 years, that has ravaged these communities who are largely pastoralists in the Asal, and they've lost up to 60 to 70% of their livestock. So just accessing the basic milk is a problem. So already the climate change has induced drought, which has really affected the ability of these communities to produce food. So we have to address the issue of food security in a very contextualized manner. Issues for the ASAL need to be dealt with a focus on pastoralism and so on and so forth.
You know, it isn't the first time that we've had drought. It isn't the first time that these countries have lost 60% of their livestock. I mean, it has happened, and it isn't in my lifetime because I'm clearly ancient. Even in the lifetime of those who are younger, they've seen it happen more than once. Now, the question that I'm actually asking is, are we able to produce enough food to feed our country or our citizens?
Potentially, you mean?
Yes.
Potentially, for sure, yeah.
Precisely.
Potentially, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, we have an entire ministry whose function is actually to do precisely this. And I'm sure a lot of this information that you have go to them, together with other people who deal with the specifics of production and what needs to do. So it isn't for lack of knowing what needs to be done in order to forestall situations like the one we're referring to that has brought about what we now deal with. Because side by side with this, we have seasons when we have more production than what we know to do with.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
So, what then is the problem really?
You mean the Ministry of Agriculture, I guess?
I mean the Ministry of Agriculture in Kenya. I mean the food production in Kenya, because the two extremes have existed at one point or the other. So it isn't as though we are continuously and consistently not producing enough food. That is really not the case.
So for me, a key takeaway that I really would like to put out there, as much as the Ministry of Agriculture has a responsibility, and especially when it comes to production, obviously, but again, it is a system. It is a Ministry of Education that is needed, a Ministry of Health, a Ministry of Transport, a Ministry of is it ICT? I don't know. Someone technology, trade. They all, if we manage to, for them, all of them, to prioritize the fight against hunger and malnutrition on their agenda, then we are moving, right? The problem is a bit that this is the issue of Ministry of Agriculture. Sorry to say that like that, and they should sort it. But that's not the thing. It's even the parents in the household of the, let's say, future students in the university that are working in all these industries that we are talking about. If we must work on their mindset to prioritize the fight against hunger, so that they, when they start their processing and their new enterprise, they have it on the list and they contribute to this kind of very noble goal. It's not only a noble goal, it's an obligation, I would say, for everyone, as you said it also at the beginning,
But you
to fight hunger, right? It's a society thing, right? Are we prioritizing as a society this fight or not? And it's everyone, it's asked for that.
If you just think at individual, all right, the 27% who are food insecure, food is a priority to them, right?
Of course.
Those who are producing food, it's a priority to them that they have enough and they have surplus to take to the market because it's an income for them. So at individual level, I would argue that there is priority, right? At individual level, priority to grow, to supply, to distribute, to access, to purchase, to put on the plate. So when we talk about now this food system and seeing that the food system has so many failures, because I don't even want to look at it as Kenya. I'm looking at this map and what you have presented to us. In the report is basically just broken down to the map. Look at Africa. And if you look at Africa, you can see all that yellow. Is that yellow?
Yeah, something like
Okay.
Something like that.
Beige.
So the beige, whatever.
Yeah.
Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Mozambique, Malawi, Sudan are at serious level. Okay? Those that are at alarming levels are South Sudan. Now think about this. Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic are at alarming levels of hunger. The DRC is at alarming levels of hunger.
For sure.
Of course, it has everything working for it to be able to produce food to feed this region. Uganda is at serious level. Uganda has things working for it to help it produce and feed.
Yeah.
Tanzania, the same. So if the food system in this region cannot make sure that everybody in this region has zero levels of hunger, what is not working in that food system?
Allow me, Eric, I must remind you that, availability and access to food is also affected by conflict. Some of the countries that you've mentioned have been in war, a state of perennial conflict. Farmers do not have adequate time to grow their food. And again, I must remind you that priority for food does not translate into capacity to produce. And that's why we are here. That you may be everybody, actually the government, as you've mentioned, Charles, the buck stops with the government. And it is in our constitution, Article 43, ensures every Kenyan the right to food in terms of quantity and quality. So the priority is there, but the capacity to produce is the issue. And, some of the other issues we've talked about is, lack of skills, lack of resources. I think the previous session, somebody talked about land, and I've had land mentioned so many times. The people with the energy and the passion and, the time, the youth to produce the food don't have land. They don't have capital to produce the food. They don't have the skills. And, to some extent, and I think this came out from the launch that we had at the University of Nairobi, which was very well attended by students, don't think that agriculture is as exciting as should be. So there are several issues that are affecting, contextual issues, and the countries we've mentioned really are affected by conflict and so many other things.
Tanzania and Uganda are not affected by conflict.
Kenya doesn't have conflict.
If there is no conflict, then there is issues of climate change. We cannot underestimate the impact of drought. You invest all your life in livestock, and you 70% of your wealth and your source of livelihood is wiped out by a single drought.
So are we saying then that in those parts of the world where, for example, if we still look at this map, right?
Yes.
And we look at the parts where we talk about it being moderate. Let's look at Algeria, for example.
Morocco, Tunisia,
which we already know that in some parts of these countries that they are affected by climate change.
Absolutely.
They are affected by desertification.
Yes.
But we're still seeing that their levels are being described as moderate to low.
The entire
So in the past,
Sahara Belt,
the entire
Egypt, Libya, Morocco,
do
Tunisia,
not suffer
Morocco.
from these issues, as you say. However, they do suffer from the effects of climate change, and they don't have conflict. So what are we looking at here then in terms of the reasons as to why the hunger levels are not, or the food or hunger or food insecurity is not then deemed as serious or alarming or extremely alarming?
Sure.
Yeah. So again, I am no expert for the North African countries, so I can't speak for them. Trying to bring it back to Kenya, and maybe the comparison to Uganda, where I've worked before. Uganda is the example also. They have such a much better climate and much better soil and all this, but they are behind Kenya, right? And it shows that it can't be only the production or the environment or something like that. It's about, you mentioned the skills, you mentioned the technologies that are used in the sector, the way people work together in the sector, the policies that are around it. That is very important and it defines whether a system is working or not. In economic terms, you call it the institutions. Are they working or not? And what are the incentives of these institutions to work in one direction or the other? Is there an incentive for, let's say, the Kenyan Bureau of Standards to make very sure that all the agricultural inputs that are provided out there are of good quality? Are they? Is it functioning well? Do we need to do something about it? Do we need to invest more in research and development in academia, or let's say also in rolling out that research and the technologies? Are we investing? Who is participating in the discussions? Is it the let's say, the wealthy and the persons that are knowing hunger by theory, or is it the people that are really affected by it? Are we allowing them to participate in the discussion, and are we giving them the room to formulate their issues?
Can I ask then, is there a direct parallel that then can be drawn, and then perhaps it's not issues of conflict or issues of climate change that affect the hunger index in some of these countries? Because if, again, looking at this map, and I think it's a great resource as has been mapped out, but because if we look at the countries that then are given this score of serious, alarming and extremely alarming, you can draw parallels between the situation and also the governance issue as has been prescribed by whichever body. You can choose whoever has decided that the governance issue in one country or another is bad, poor, worse, right? But if you look at this, and you can draw a line between that and this prescription that has been given about governance and management and appropriation and priority issues in those countries, maybe those then are the issues that we're looking at that would say we are looking at higher levels of hunger because there are certain things that have not been managed properly as has been prescribed by whatever body.
Absolutely. I think you are reading my mind, because I wanted now to, move into the issue of governance and prioritization of resources. And I think Christian has mentioned about that. Where should we invest in terms of solving the issue? But of course, the issue of governance does not exclude the other contextual issues, and therefore the governance of food systems should recognize the challenges and the opportunities we have. And I love the proverb that we talked about, the opportunities we have as Kenya to produce, to move from a food deficient country to a food sufficient country. We have a lot of land in the north, like Algeria, but you need water. So probably the government there has invested in access to, increased availability of water for multi-use, for farming, for human consumption, for livestock. So perhaps looking at our water systems, improving access to food, access to water, improving access to quality agricultural inputs. We've talked about fertilizers in this country for a very long time. Every year, the issue of fertilizers comes in. Right now, the government is chasing rogue traders who are stocking poor quality fertilizers, or what we'd call illegal fertilizers. We issue of quality of farm inputs, and of course then going back to the labor, and that is where now the youth comes in. So all these issues, governance, the contextual challenges that we are facing are critical, and I think that takes us to the next point of what we must do. And in Kenya, I think we are a country that is proud of our policies. We have very good policies that, if well implemented, if we invest, if we can attract not just government, individual and private sector investment, then we can become very food secure. We have, for example, the climate smart strategy, which talks about investing in climate resilient food production technologies. We recently developed a national position paper on food security in line with the UN Food System Summit that took place in 2021, that takes to the center digital innovations, the involvement of youth, the knowledge around food production, among other things. So governance, of course, is aligned with policy. Governance is involved is also gives a good indication of how we will invest as a country. And I must say, of course, the ASALs, we've really not done a very good job as a country to invest in our ASALs. Some of these communities are seeing roads in this century, tarmac roads in this century. So it's a whole system that we must address, and we have key recommendations that we must invest in. So absolutely right, governance is a critical issue that we must address.
So what is that place of the youth as we conclude this conversation? What's the power of the youth? What's the message that you're giving to the youth? What's your power in shaping our food systems?
The power is their numbers, their sheer numbers. I mean, I found it almost a bit interesting when I was preparing for these Global Hunger Index launches. And the statistics are amazing. 70% of the population in Kenya is considered a youth, so below 35. They make 40% of the workforce. So in every aspect that we have discussed today in this show, is a youth involved. And it is their perception, their attitude, their motivation that shapes this nation already, right? And they are making the change already. The question is a bit, how much do we deliberately work and listen and work with them, with their potentials, of course. And I see a massive potential in the Kenyan youth. I meet a lot of, also during the launch situations, I met a lot of people that are concerned about food and nutrition security in the country. And that's great to see, because those are the people that will shape these food systems in the future and make them hopefully better to serve the purpose. And it is great to see and super motivating to work with the youth in that regard. And you mentioned that agriculture is not sexy or not so attractive for the youth, but it is. I think it's easy said, but there are many youth out there that are very much interested and see it as an opportunity. See it as an opportunity.
They are properly capacitated. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Somebody's asking, what's that website again? It's globalhungerindex.org. For more information on these reports, globalhungerindex.org, you'll find it. Dr. Edwin Mbugua Maina is a health and nutrition coordinator at Concern Worldwide, and Christian Schniepper is a Kenya country director at Welthungerhilfe.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.